Hello everyone, today I will be reviewing 2001 A Space Odyssey. So 2001 A Space Odyssey came out in 1968 and it was directed by Stanley Kubrick, and it's a science fiction film, and it was a film that was very polarizing with critics and audiences. So some people, they really loved it, and others people, they really hated it and they didn't understand it at all. So the plot of this film, it's fairly tricky to explain, as to be honest there isn't really much of a plot at all, as a lot of it is quite silent, there isn't much dialogue, and you get bits and bobs of classical music playing. But really at the start of the film we start at the dawn of man with some apes, and these apes, they're fairly primitive creatures on Earth. They're being hunted by predators until they find this monolith. And I don't know what it is, but it's this giant monolith which is tall and black, and all staring at it, all staring at the monolith, wondering what it is. And eventually they pick up some bones and they use them as tools, and this is supposed to be the first stage of their evolution. So one of the apes, he takes a bone, he throws it up in the air, and this is where we get quite an iconic edit where it suddenly fast forward to the future, to the space age, or perhaps the year 2001, from the name 2001 A Space Odyssey. And in the year 2001 we have this spaceship. Well, we're not actually sure what it is. It could be a satellite or a spaceship, which is in outer space, floating in space around the Earth, and we get these fancy sequences with these space stations, and it all looks absolutely brilliant. And one thing I have to say about this film, I think it has aged very well. Given the film came out in 1968, obviously there wasn't any CGI or anything like that, but it still looks very good. So it doesn't look particularly dated. One of the reasons is because of the music in it. So this film has a few pieces of classical music in it. The main one is called Also Sprach Zarathustra, which was composed by Richard Strauss, and the other one is the Blue Danube, which was composed by Johann Strauss II. So Also Sprach Zarathustra is used at the start of the film and also near the end, and it really creates this epic, grand feel of the film, as we're in space, and space is obviously very large. And at the start of Also Sprach Zarathustra, we get the music build up, the boom 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 sounds, and it really is a spectacular piece of music, a spectacular score. And then the Blue Danube is quite a different piece of music, so it's very relaxing, very melodic, and quite hypnotizing actually. So back to the story again, what we eventually have is this spaceship which is going towards Jupiter, and there's 5 people on board. So 3 of them are in hibernation, who are going to wake up when the ship gets to Jupiter. 2 of them are the main pilots, and then we also have another passenger, which is the computer called HAL 9000, and HAL 9000 is a very advanced computer and never makes any mistakes. And we see lots of interesting things happen on the ship, as HAL 9000 turns out to be quite an interesting character and maybe not what it seems to be. So what I absolutely love about this film is that it manages to draw you in without trying too hard. So you feel like you need to really focus on this film, but at the same time you can relax and just take it all in, because it is a very slow-paced film, and a lot of people won't like that. A lot of people want a really adrenaline pumping, fast-paced, action-packed science fiction film with lots of spaceships and lasers and gunfights all over the place. So if you want that kind of thing, then you won't find it here. But at the same time, this film, it is so much more than that, and you really need to appreciate it from an artistic and a stylistic point of view if you want to make the most of it. And what I love about this film is that we get there's lots of scenes where it's complete silent, and in any other type of film they would put loads of loud, heart-pumping music over the top of it. But when you watch this film, you realise it's not necessary. It's not necessary to have loud music all the time. So it either has the piece of classical music, it has complete silence, or it has lines of dialogue. And there's not very much dialogue in this film at all. As I mentioned before, there's roughly 40 minutes of dialogue, and the whole film is about 2.5 hours. One of the best scenes in this film is when one of the crew goes out into space outside the ship to check something that's on the outside, and we see HAL 9000, the computer, actually push him out into space. And at this moment, as the audience were watching, thinking, "Oh no, he's obviously going to die. This is bad. Something bad's happened to him." And if it was any other movie, there would be really loud music at this point, or it would really be like seem like a really thrilling, tense moment. So they'd have some music to match with it. But in this film, during the scene, it is complete silence. So we see it happening, and there's no music at all. But at the same time, you have to remember this film is set in space, and obviously space is supposed to be completely quiet. So this is actually how it would look if it was happening in real life. And Stanley Kubrick's very good at this, very good at creating this eerie, dark, quiet atmosphere when the film takes place in space. And it wouldn't seem right to have crazy, over-the-top music in this film, because it just wouldn't match with it. Because the film tries to really do justice to the area of space and what is happening in it. Now, this film is quite difficult to explain, especially at the ending scene. So at the ending scene, we really get the spaceship going towards Jupiter. Then we get this sequence where there's loads of flashing lights and swirling patterns all over the place. And I must admit, the first time I watched it, I had no idea what was going on. And actually, the second time I watched it, I still wasn't completely sure either. But it doesn't matter. You're not supposed to understand everything that is going on in this film. If you try and understand every little piece and analyse every little section of it, you're not watching it in the correct way. It's as simple as that. You need to sit back, relax, and just enjoy it. This is what this film is all about. Appreciate the cinematography in this film. You have to appreciate it from an artistic point of view and not think too much about it. So the scene that comes right at the end is in a room. So we get one of the crew members. He goes in there and he's suddenly really old. He's a lot older. He sits down. He looks over at the bed, and then he's really, really, really old. And then we see a star child. So we see him, well, first of all, we see a monolith appear in the room, like I mentioned with the monoliths earlier. And then the old man turns into a child and he's born again. Now, obviously, if you haven't seen the film, what I've just said to you, you're probably thinking, what am I talking about? It doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, it might not necessarily make a lot of sense, but you have to think of it in its most simplistic form. What is the film trying to tell you? And there's lots of different ways of interpreting it. I'm not necessarily going to go into too much detail, because what my view is what won't be what lots of other people's views are. And Stanley Kubrick is very good at doing this. It's very symbolic with his films. He doesn't like to be too obvious or too ambiguous, or too unambiguous rather. He likes to really portray things that can be interpreted in different ways. So I have to say, I think this is one of the greatest science fiction films of all time. It really is a fantastic masterpiece of a film, and unfortunately it is a film lots of people won't appreciate, because it is very slow paced. Some people may find it boring, or some people might not understand it at all. But I think just because you don't understand it, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. So I am going to give 2001: A Space Odyssey rating a 10 out of 10, because I think it is a spectacular film that really has stood the test of time given its age, and I think it will still be recognised as a classic in years to come. So 2001: A Space Odyssey. So there we go, guys. What do you think? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Do you dislike it? Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.